Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Spotlight. When I first started researching this, I didn't really have any idea how many people believed in it. But after doing some looking around and watching some videos, I noticed that a person named Jeranism was mentioned a lot in comments and stuff. So I checked out his channel, and sure enough, he's got about 11,000 subscribers, and he's, as far as I can tell, he's got them believing that the Earth is flat. Um, I'd like to think that most of the people who subscribe to that channel do it for a kick and a laugh every now and then, but I have a sneaking suspicion that isn't true. So, in this episode of the Spotlight, I will be doing a video response to Jeranism's video claiming that the Earth is in fact flat. I won't be covering every point that Jeranism makes in his video because it's too long. I just plan to point out some things that I see as glaring oversights that completely cause the theory to fall apart. So without further ado, here we go.
Back again for another video talking about reality versus what others may consider reality. Kind of came to a realization recently, and that realization was that basically whoever got there first got to make the rules.
I like how people seem to think that making a realization means that you just thought of something and therefore it's true. When I think of a realization, I think of when I think of something and then I experience something which proves it's true, I have a realization. Not that it all happens in my mind and therefore what I think is reality.
So unfortunately, now we live in a world of pretenders, and I do plan on doing everything that I can to get that changed. Mostly because Pretend Land or Globe Earth or Ball-E World, Twirlorama, you name it, is all taught in schools.
That's because it's based on science, which has been tested and repeated and shown to be without a doubt factual. And when I say it, the fact that I'm referring to is that the Earth is spheroid in shape and not a flat disk. We know this because of scientific method, because of tests that we've done that show that it's real. I personally have never had a teacher refer to it as Twirly Land or Bally World, but yeah, no, that's just new to me. I've never heard that before in my life until you, Jeranism.
Clearly, the globe is completely and totally impossible. Let's take a look at a few examples of this. First, let's look at solar and lunar eclipses.
This should be pretty neat. Eclipses are actually pretty good evidence of the fact that the Earth is round, so I'm interested to see how he leaves out specific pieces of information in order to make it support his idea. Take it away, Jeranism.
So, if you look at the top, you'll see that the moon, coming right to left, is going through a lunar eclipse in which the Earth's shadow supposedly appears on the moon.
Lunar eclipses happen about twice a year, roughly every 6 months. They're not always total lunar eclipses. We get partial eclipses, which is due to a few variables. One of those variables is the fact that the moon's orbit isn't perfectly level with everything else. It's on a tilt. It's also slightly elliptical. And where you are viewing it from on the Earth makes a difference.
So, if that were true, you can just look at the distance that the moon is traveling there. If it were true, then our full moon would last as long as the lunar eclipses do.
It wouldn't mean that at all, since lunar eclipses and full moons are caused by slightly different series of events. A lunar eclipse takes place when the moon passes through the relatively small window of the Earth's shadow. A full moon takes place when the moon is about 180 degrees relative to the Earth and the sun, which allows for the light to hit it and completely light up the side of it that we are looking at. One of the reasons that a full moon can last longer than a lunar eclipse is because of that difference in the size of the window. The shadow of the Earth is relatively small, so it can only be inside of it for so long. In order to have a full moon, all it has to do is be 180 degrees to the Earth and the sun, with the sun on the opposite side of the Earth. Now, because the moon has an elliptical orbit, it just needs to be just above or just below the shadow of the Earth to A, avoid a lunar eclipse, and B, be a full moon. And since there are all of these changing variables, both lunar eclipses and full moons can vary in length by quite a bit.
The last lunar eclipse that we had lasted 3 hours and 24 minutes. So do our full moons last 3 hours and 24 minutes, or do they last 3 days?
They don't always last 3 hours, and they don't always last 3 days. Actually, a full moon never lasts 3 days. It happens for a few seconds. If you have a telescope, you can see it not happening after a few seconds, where the light starts to go off to one side and you start to see a bit of darkness again. But apparently that's irrelevant.
Something we need to ask ourselves. If you look a little bit lower there, you'll see now the moon is coming around from left to right. And this is the time when it goes in front of the sun, and that is a solar eclipse. And during a solar eclipse, the moon blocks the sun, and this happens very quickly.
That's because it's an object passing in front of another object which is much larger and further away than it. If you took art class in grade 9, you would have learned perspective, and this whole situation would seem pretty obvious to you.
Our new moon lasts 3 days. So why wouldn't eclipses also last 3 days?
Because they are different things?
Is the moon actually going around monthly? Or is it going around daily, as some may think?
I personally don't know anyone who thinks that the moon goes around the planet once a day, but the general consensus, which is based on measurements taken from different points, and let me say this clearly, around the world, have determined that about once every 27 days, the moon goes, again, around the Earth. Our friend Jeranism here then goes on to mock people who find beauty in a solar eclipse for a few minutes, so we'll skip that and go on to the next point that he makes.
Now let's take a look at this image. I'll go through it kind of step by step with you.
I'm really glad you're going to take this step by step, because your illustration already has a few really intense problems with it.
So first, imagine that you are the man standing at letter A, the little pink character. Looking out at your horizon, you can see that the yellow lines are kind of his vantage point. Now, if you were to say, well, the pink guy is standing at letter X, or the pink guy is standing at letter Z, understand that we could rotate the globe so that your pink man was standing at the top where I have situated letter A, right?
Nope.
We could rotate X so he was where A is, or rotate Z where A is, so everyone has that top perspective.
I hope you realize that when you say that, what you're implying is that when someone says, but if I'm not standing there, then I have a different line of sight, your response is, oh, that's fine, we can just flip the planet so that it works out for you as well. So either you think that you can change part of a process to arrive at a conclusion by altering the environment and still expecting it to be the same experiment, or you believe that the Earth's axis flips around wildly and no one notices that. If I missed any of the other crazy things that this statement implies, please let me know in the comments. So Jeranism goes on to try and explain this point, but he's already fundamentally misunderstood how line of sight plays into this, and he seems to also believe that when people talk about how much curvature, distance in curvature, like how much the land drops over a certain distance, he seems to think that that means that it goes up. And you'll see that further ahead in his video, where he makes statements about planes having to climb over the ocean and stuff like that. So we'll continue on to the next point.
Here's another image to show you that astronomy is bullshit.
Ooh, that was ultra clever.
If you take a look here, you can see there's 2 different Earths. Let's take the one on the left first, and we're the little white guy.
Fucking racist.
Of course, from there he'd be able to see the stars as I've circled in purple.
What, and only the Asians can see the blue stars? God, I'm triggered.
Correct, makes sense. Well, 6 months later we'd be on the other side of the sun. So let's now look at the Earth that's on the right-hand side. And now we'd be able to see the stars that are in the blue circles. But how would you be able to see the same stars as on the other side of the Earth.
I'm not really sure at this point if he's trying to say that he thinks the Earth is tidally locked to the sun and never spins, or if the Earth is just blocking our view to those stars, and if that's the case, then he should know that we do have satellites to look at them with. If he is talking specifically about a person standing on the ground, then he should probably be aware of the fact that there are some stars you can only see at certain times of year because of the Earth's tilt-in axis and how that changes over time, because it does wobble back and forth. Some stars, like the North Star, are always visible, which is why people have used them for guidance.
You can't. They'd be missing. Yet, that's not as appears in our reality.
Except for the times when it does.
Next image, we have another picture of the Earth, and you'll see the man at the top of the globe is spinning 150 miles per hour, while the man at the equator is spinning 1050 miles per hour. So if the man at the top spent 20 years of his life up at the top and then took a little plane ride down to the equator and got off the plane spinning 900 miles per hour faster than he was just a few hours ago, how does he not fall on the ground and see stars?
The reason for this, Jeranism, is because as he's on that couple-hour flight going from the North Pole to somewhere near the equator, he is, as he makes his journey, slowly being accelerated up to the speed of the ground underneath the plane. You don't get off of a plane and instantly catch up to the speed of the Earth. That's madness. Everything in the atmosphere is rotating at the same speed, more or less. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that you basically proved your own point wrong with your own words. As you said, if our man got out of the plane, moving already 900 and some miles faster than when he got on it, then there would be no relative speed difference between his feet and the ground. So as far as he's concerned, he would be stationary.
We'll never know. It's a mystery of the spinning ball globe.
No, it's all cool, man. We just figured it out. You can go home. Please.
Now let's take a look at the next image. This one's interesting because I put a bunch of dots all over the place.
Holy fuck. How did you do that?
Now imagine that I've told all those people to simply look north. And the purple arrows are the direction that every person would be looking, which would be disastrous.
There are several things wrong with this. One, as someone who took navigation in school, I can tell you that a lot of those aren't pointing magnetic north. You can't just draw a line on a 2D representation of the Earth that goes straight from where you're telling the person look to the North Pole and say that that is where the person would be looking if they looked north. That makes no sense.
And if you look down around 7 o'clock, I'd say, if we treated the Earth as a clock, you can see that one guy has a purple and a yellow line coming out of his head, because if I told him to look north, technically he could look either direction.
So if double line guy is actually right on the circumference like you're depicting him, then no, he can't look in either direction if he's using a compass. You can't just look in a different direction and say that's north, because if you drew a line on a two-dimensional representation of the Earth, that would go to the North Pole. The line that you have in yellow there is depicting a northeasterly direction from that dot's location, but if you tell him to look north, he's only going to look one direction. There's only one direction to look.
He could look at the yellow line, or he could look at the purple line. So is that our reality, that north is two directions?
Nope, you definitely made that up.
You can see here that on this little diagram, the highest mountain in the United States is 3 miles.
Wait for it.
Plane flies about 7 miles.
Almost there.
The ISS flies at 250 miles high. Yet the plane on its way to Hawaii, 789 miles. It's an impressive jetliner.
That's right, he thinks that people who know the Earth is round believe that the plane has to climb 783 miles into the air to fly from California to Hawaii. This is, of course, completely ridiculous, and everyone knows that As that curve happens, the ground, the atmosphere, the magnetosphere, the stratosphere, everything follows that curve. So as you make that change in distance, the ground is still the same relative distance below you. So the plane is not climbing at all. The only climbing that a plane does is going from the runway to, say, 10,000 feet or wherever it flies and then back down towards the ground. But all of these distances are relative to the ground, and those are the only things that matter for flying a plane. You're talking about two different things here. So that was the first episode of the Spotlight wrapped up. I hope everybody liked it. There will be more coming in the future. If you did like the video, please like and subscribe. There'll be links in the description if you want to look at any of my sources or if you'd like to watch the original video that I'm responding to. Everyone, take care and have a great one.